Well, let's get into the news review now. All the topical matters, we're getting into them. But very interesting. I just want you to contemplate this. The e-levy cake that we saw yesterday at the 65th birthday anniversary of the Majority Leader in Parliament, Osechi Mensah Bonsu. How do you feel about it? Why am I posing the question? Well, on social media, there were different, many and varied thoughts on it. And then we had the response from an honorable member. And again, from the Majority Leader himself that, well, this was a cake that was just brought in at the tail end of the party, that it wasn't the official cake. But how do you feel about it? Some have suggested that whoever put together that cake or whoever donated that cake might have been insensitive to whatever the thinking of Ghanaians on the back of the e-levy. Let's face the facts. At least here, from our statistics, the surveys we have conducted in the past, a lot more people are averse to the e-levy. So what was the intent of this cake? Interesting dynamics in there. I've seen a lot of people share their thoughts on it on Twitter. I guess the latest that I saw just this morning was Bright Simmons again. He seems to talk about a lot of these matters, saying leading members of Ghana's ruling party are seen at a party carving up and eating a cake baked in the shape of the massively unpopular e-levy tax on mobile money and fintech services. Critics say, quote, the eat cake party is a bad metaphor given concern about, quote, tax and chop. What do you think? It's one of the matters I'll run by our very own guest who will be joining us this morning, Selon Brantier, as we go into the newspapers. But let's start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. Government spends 662.5 million Ghana cedis on COVID-19. Story on page 16. Let's take a quick look at that, shall we? So it says the government spent about 662.5 million to address issues relating to the coronavirus disease pandemic in 2021. An additional 305 million out of the 403 million received from the World Bank was expended on COVID-19 related issues. The funds were used to provide personal protective equipment, cleaning materials, sanitizer and paper towels, vehicles, infection prevention control, commodities, drugs, among others, for agencies and during the reopening of schools. Again, the expenditure covered the government's provision of free water and electricity, the establishment of 15 World Bank treatment centers across the country, ventilators, oxygen equipment, aprons, isolation centers, quarantine units, public education, and advertisements in the media. It goes on and on, but of course, it was Health Minister Kwaku Agyeman-Manu giving this breakdown in Accra yesterday. I guess it is also on the back of the fact that some of us have been making calls for a better breakdown of our spending, of the sums of money we've got from the IMF, the World Bank, SDR money, and all of that, even internally generated funds on the back of the COVID-19 pandemic. But I guess, as these have been mentioned, the devil is in the detail. The breakdown. How many PPE? What exactly went into sanitizers? How many of them? And these paper towels, the vehicles, and all of that. Those are the details that remain unaddressed, which we would like to get into. So we can, of course, if it's that good, then we can ensure value for money. Attorney General presents 91 vehicles to agencies. That is on pages 24 and 25. And it says the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Mr. Godfred Yeboah Dame, has handed over 91 vehicles and 1 motorcycle to agencies under his ministry. The beneficiary agencies are the Economic and Organized Crime Office, the Registrar General's Department, the Council for Law Reporting, the Law Reform Commission, the Copyright Office, the Legal Aid Commission, and the Ghana School of Law. All of them receiving batches of these 91 vehicles. Now, Ghana Card, now e-passport, and yesterday was a yesterday. I recall just about 2 days ago, I had one member of parliament re-echoing this, talking about the fact that now our Ghana Card can be used as an e-passport, just as had been mentioned by the Vice President. So Ghana's national identity card, the Ghana Card, has received international endorsement to be recognized globally as a valid electronic passport. Yesterday, the International Civil Aviation Organization gave its seal of approval for the Ghana card as well as its future biometric equivalents to be used as official documentation at all 197 ICAO compliant countries and 44,000 airports worldwide. And of course, this would mean that if you were to travel when this kicks in fully, if you were to travel and you didn't have your passport, you could use your Ghana card instead. Other stories now. Ghana Airport Company Limited MD's appointment terminated. That's on page 29. Another interesting story I want to get into very quickly, and because it raises a lot of curious ears and well, sniffing noses as well. But the story says the board of the Ghana Airports Company Limited will today receive handing over notes from the outgoing managing director of the company, Mr. Yaw Kwakwa. This follows a crunch board meeting yesterday to discuss the letter removing the MD from office. Yesterday, there were media reports about the removal of the MD of the GACL from office. The Minister of Transport, Kweku Ofori-Asiamah, in a letter dated February 4, 2022, and directed at the board chairman of the Ghana Airports Company Limited, that would be Paul Adomotri, communicated a directive from President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo on January 31, 2022, terminating the MD's appointment. So some points of curiosity, though, for people like me. He wasn't even aware that he had been axed from his position. He wasn't aware. If you recall, when my colleagues spoke to him, it appeared he was not in the know. So he wasn't aware. It had happened supposedly on his blind side. How did the documentation, the letter dispatching him, get out and into the media fray? Was it intentional? Was it not? But then, of course, the board meetings held and briefings being given. Some, though, have asked the question about why now? Did it have anything to do with that, discourse in terms of the new aviation setup put up by Dr. Daniel Macaulay? Did it? I mean, this is just a question that people are putting out there. But did it not? I heard one, I believe is the deputy minister, who was also echoing the point that the president has all the powers to appoint and fire. And he doesn't have to give reasons to appoint and to fire. So if he's done it, he's done it. We can read our own meanings into it, but the president has the express powers to do so, and he has done it. That is the situation there. Of course, we'll see about the appointment of another managing director. Korle Bu Eye Center conducts 6 cornea transplants. That's on page 20. Kudos to them. And of course, we also have this one. I'll be getting into it when we get into the sporting segment. UN court orders Uganda to pay $325 million in reparations, and South African inventor wins a Vodacom payout. Check out details on the international page. That is page 5 of the paper. Now let's get into some sporting content. And I know a lot of us will be interested in this one because it has to do with the fortunes of the Black Stars. Otto Addo takes charge of the Black Stars. Houghton appointed technical advisor. So we have the two gentlemen whose names have been in the picture for a while, taking up key positions. Chris Houghton is going to be a technical advisor, while Otto Addo is going to be the head of the newly constituted technical team of the Black Stars. So Otto Addo, 46, was the FA's preferred choice to lead the team against Nigeria. And part of why they felt he should be the one was the fact that he had been with the technical team, or the past management team of the Black Stars, which was headed by Milovan Rajevac. So that is it. And ban donkey hide trading, animal welfare charity. That's on the back page of the paper. But let me welcome aboard Selim Brantia. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I am very well. How about you?
Not bad at all.
Beautiful morning. God has been good. Let me just run by you a few things that I have discussed up to this point so that you can just share your thoughts on them. I'll start with the sacking of the Ghana Airport Company Limited Managing Director, Yaw Kwakwa, and the sort of discourse that has emanated on social media, with a lot of people sharing their thoughts. Oh, it's because of what happened with Daniel Macaulay. Oh, it is not. We've heard from a deputy minister, Hassan Tampuli, who has said that it can't be. The president has the powers to fire, and he also has the powers to appoint, and he doesn't need to give reasons either in firing or appointing. Your take?
Oh, yes. So, well, the deputy minister is right in saying that they have exclusive right to hire and fire because they are the sector ministry that runs the entity. However, a lot of questions remain, and that explanation alone is not enough to convince skeptics about the firing of Mr. Yaw-Kwakwa, considering the fact that there has been, if you would say, a chain of events recently that have led to this particular incident. And it gives people work that there are certain unseen hands that seem to be able to manipulate, or that roam in the corridors of power that seem to manipulate many outcomes, even if they are not consequential or anything that stands in the way of it. And this narrative should not be made to persist because it becomes very dangerous for people, others who want to conduct even simple business agencies. And then it creates the perception that there are puppet masters in the scene who can actually influence certain outcomes. And it is not great for most people, morale of quite a lot of people, if these things happen. But I have also heard a school of thought that the man in question already had his job shaky due to internal wranglings by staff of the Civil Aviation Authority, and this was a long time coming. But whichever way, I believe that the government and the sector ministry owes us a longer explanation, because executive decisions at this level have to be justified with some merit. And unfortunately, in this particular case, the merit is not very clear. And the mandate, the reason for this change of mandate is not very clear, because, mind you, we are not stacking a low-level cleaner or someone like that. We are talking about the one who runs the whole organization.
Right.
And the kind of signals it sends to other state-owned entities or other state-run entities should have been very, very important for this particular exercise.
So I guess it gets even more curious as you talk about the merits of dismissal in this instance, because there had been prior issues to do with Yaw-Kwakwa and the Ghana Airport Company Limited. In fact, some of my colleagues interacted with some of the staff there about, how they felt about this, and it wasn't too clear. Of course, they wouldn't rejoice over his sacking, but there had been issues prior to this incident, grievous issues, if you like. Some of them even on the back of COVID-19, testing at the airport and more. None of these had resulted in his being dispatched, but some people say the timing may be problematic, because right after the bit about Terminal 1 and the issues arising, then he gets the axe. But like I've said, the president has the right to hire and fire.
Yes, exactly. So it's something that requires more clarification. The timing doesn't make it any better. Even if it was something that was justified, the timing doesn't make it any better. So just the right of them to hire and fire alone is not enough. I believe better explanations need to be given to the public.
Another quick issue. Did you take a look at the majority leader's e-levy cake? Have you seen it?
Yes, I saw it in the afternoon yesterday.
Okay, so in case you've not got some of the briefs, let me just let you know that it has been said, and the majority leader himself, per what we know, has suggested that this cake was given, brought to the event. So basically someone else donated it. It wasn't the official cake for his 65th birthday, at which we had the vice president and his wife, the second lady, and some very prominent people from both sides of parliament. I even saw Senor Hosi there, not a member of parliament, of course. But Looking at the dynamics and what people have been saying, I'm sure you've seen some of them. Even your own colleague, Bright Simmons, sharing his thoughts on them, calling it a bad metaphor and all of that. Do you feel it was apt, even if it was donated? Should it have been in there, and should it have been accepted, so to speak? And whoever donated this, so to speak, do you think? I mean, what do you make of it? Insensitive to what Ghanaians have been saying about the e-levy, or just another thing that maybe we're making a mountain out of, which is just a molehill?
So there are two things. First of all, it's quite ironic that for a government that has been doing road shows on the e-levy, I think that the best parameter to judge or gauge the public's reaction or enthusiasm or the reason why they have been going on the road trips trying to tout its practicability and its essence as well as its importance, etc. This cake has become an unplanned barometer for that, for them to really see whether the public really likes the idea or not. And it has turned out that there has been a huge outpouring of anger, of shock, of surprise. And that alone probably should send the right signal to the proponents of this bill, to see the amount of anger it has generated. Surely, if the cake had written free SHS or something, the reactions people would have been totally different. But this was unanimous, and that shows the level of anger. And it also shows that the acceptance of this cake and the fact that they put it out there, like my colleague said, was a bad metaphor. I mean, it clearly shows one side that is willing to do something regardless of what people think. And the majority, the overwhelming majority, that see this as a burden that is unjustified for them to carry. And so the messages from this is what I believe is most important. It could have started as a light-hearted gift or a tease. The fact that it was accepted and then put in that way at the party meant or showed some sensitivity. And let's assume
Did you say showed some sensitivity or insensitivity?
In this context, which one will be the right one? Whatever it is, it just shows that even if a small group of people thought that this was a laughing matter, the general public does not think it's a laughing matter at all. And it should signal to those who want e-levy so bad that it is going to create an uproar of the type we probably have not seen in many years.
Tied to that, of course, there is that demonstration today, starting from the Obrasport through Farisko and through the AU area, all the way to the AU monument, all the way to Parliament House. It's the Yintia demonstration. It's on the back of the e-levy and other matters that the NDC and others feel are inimical to ordinary Ghanaians and the economy, their private pockets. What do you think about this demonstration? And what do you think would really result from it? Would it just be another demonstration and that is it?
We are not yet to the point of full demonstrator fatigue yet. So it might be something that will just liven the base support of NDC followers to probably let them know that their party is still in the narrative beyond Parliament. And I think that they have every right to run this demonstration. I think a lot of people who are on the fence will be looking at this very carefully to see how reactions are. As to what they would achieve, it's neither here nor there, because there have been so many consultations in the media space, on cyberspace, about the fact that this e-levy is not the best approach. but these have yielded nothing. And so a demonstration on the street, if it becomes a very huge one, then maybe the signals will be sent better. If it's just another of those demonstrations that is not joined by large numbers of people, it will be disregarded as mere party propaganda by the other party, and it will be dismissed in that form. But the impact will be that it will embolden others to also want to take some kind of the public action in terms of demonstration to just be able to drive home the point.
Right.
Whichever way you look at it, the government really needs to have a rethink about its stance on the e-levy. And the events that have happened recently with even the cake and the visuals from the cake send a very wrong signal to many people who are already reeling under the economic shifts that have been happening over the past 2 months.
Right.
And the timing is just wrong politically for any party that would have been in power and in this position.
2 quick stories from the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Government committed to Agenda 111, that's according to the health minister, who says the delivery of the project was seriously on course as 67 out of the 111 had taken off since the sod-cutting ceremony in March 2021. It's just about a day or two ago that I had the NDC representative in the studio talk about the fact that he doubts these would be effected within the time frame that has been given, because if government is cutting down on expenditure by 20% in terms of its budget and there's no e-levy, he doubts it would be able to execute on this. But here we have the sector minister saying 67 out of the 111 have taken off, have not cited these projects, but of course over time I guess more details will be given. Your quick thoughts on that?
I'm sure that this Agenda 111 was started probably almost 2 years ago, if you count from the time when, well, 1.5 years ago. So really, if they wanted to do this back then, a lot of funding should have been secured even before now for the projects to begin. Because these things, as much as people think there are things you can do in a year or two, usually something like this will take at least 5 years to complete, because many different sources of funding will have to be gotten, areas will have to be prioritized, so many pre-takeoff activities need to take place, sourcing of products, etc. needs to take place. So while it's a very great agenda, the issue is that the promises politically and the issues on the ground are 2 different beasts altogether. And usually politicians will try to milk the atmosphere to promise heaven, but in reality the heaven will usually take 3 times longer to arrive than they predict, because of the so many things that need to be done in the background. So yeah, the Agenda 111 might be on course, but it's not something that I personally believe would be completed even before the current government's tenure is over, due to the fact that there are so many other issues that need to be dealt with. Even if the money was there, there are so many other issues that need to be dealt with, the kind of people that they would want to build and the kind of materials they want to source. Because a hospital isn't like building a school. You actually need specialized equipment and technicians, etc., to fly in and come and calibrate certain aspects of it. So it's not child's play at all.
Right.
So yeah, it will take at least 3 to 4 years for the whole thing to be complete, even from now.
Let's do a few more stories and call it a review. UTAG 4-week-old strike, students begin to return home. That's on page 16 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, and that is as lecturers continue to stay away from lecture halls. With the recent dynamics that we've seen, the UTAG failing or deciding not to attend that confab with the employer that was summoned by the NLC on Monday, this past Monday. Of course, we had the Vice Chancellor's Ghana intervene and try to have, not all of them were there, but try to bring together the 2 sides. We still don't know for certain whether they are going back. And now students are going back home. Your take?
It's a very, very sad situation. It reminds me of when we went to first year in university back in '98 or so. There was a similar situation, and we had to go home for, I think, almost a month or so. To think that these issues keep recurring, and the fact that in reality you don't expect PhD holders to be taking those poetry exams they've been taking. It's a very sad situation. When you compare the fact that footballers, for example, get $20,000 per game as appearance fee, and lecturers' annual salary is around that range, it speaks volumes about how we treasure the building of human resource in the country. On the other hand, the NLC probably should be able to have a more neutral stance instead of being an opposer all the time. I think that the NLC is failing in the ability to be a negotiator and bring people on the table, and it's trying to be more of an overbearing, and if you would use the word stubborn, stakeholder. And I believe that kind of attitude does not bring progress, because I sincerely believe that the children should be in school because their calendars have been disrupted already by all the things that have been happening, and this just further aggravates the problem.
Right.
And,
the business. Are you done with that submission, Salom?
Yeah, so I think that this is a very, very sad issue. As much as I would want to blame the lecturers for disrupting the calendar, I also believe that the NLC also has a lot of questions to answer due to the fact that they are not budging in any way to try and make this resolve more amicably.
Right. The business analyst this morning says inflation hits 13.9%, rising prices of goods and services to increase cost of living. And we have the BNFT $13.2 billion saved in power purchase agreement renegotiations. And maybe this one before I do the final story. The Daily Statesman, NAPO, has kept faith with the people. That's according to the Energy Ministry, of course, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh being spoken of here. And then NDC is against government's transformation efforts, Wabena Samoa, Communications Director of the MPP, says. Let's wrap with this story, Salom, and call it a review. Government builds 3,602 kilometer roads in 4 years. My only concern there, we've had a string of accidents in recent times, mimicking what we experienced last year. In fact, we're only a shade close to the numbers that we saw in terms of deaths last year, month on month. What do you make of it? This year hasn't been any better. Parliament is calling for a discussion on the carnage on our roads. They are calling for the NRSA, the DVLA and others to bear some responsibility. Your quick take on that as we wrap.
I think there are much more drivers on the road than we've ever had before.
Right.
And a lot of it boils down to the attitude of drivers on the roads. It's bizarre sometimes when you're on the highway and you see the way people drive. I think there should be better controls and better fining systems to arrest such drivers, cameras and the rest, because the situation is becoming very, very, it's getting to the point where it's untenable. That's one. But secondly, I also believe that the design of the road or some of these roads themselves cause a lot of accidents.
Right.
If you are on the highways, for example, at major junctions, you will see trotro bus stops right at the junctions, and then they disrupt traffic needlessly and cause a lot of deaths, especially when people are crossing the road to pick a trotro on a very fast street. These are, I believe, glaring flaws in the design when you are close to urban areas and close to the rural areas. We really should be able to ensure that these highways are built in a much safer way with medians and things like that to prevent some of the kinds of overtaking that you see and all. So it's a multi-pronged approach that we need to do. We have to build the roads to adapt to how the style people drive these days, and speed ramps alone are not enough to do that. But beyond that, I think that there should be more rigorous testing of drivers and the attitude of drivers, because they are the ones solely responsible for their lives and the lives of their passengers. And most times, you would see that a lot of the accidents are due to human error, and a lot of this human error is mistakes that shouldn't have even happened in the first place.
Right.
Overtaking in corners, overtaking over hills, two big buses trying to overtake each other and taking a long time to do that, and then one ends up killing a lot of people. There are too many of these issues. And like you said, the National Road Safety Board should also work on checking these cars more rigorously when they go through the annual DVLA checks.
Right.
You see some cars on the road, and you wonder whether they've ever even gone through any roadworthy check at all, because they are moving what do you call it, rust buckets, and you have quite a lot of them in the system, and they break down in the middle of the road, and there are no signals, so people just run into them and die. We've had a lot of these scenarios happening, and we really have to strengthen that organization,
right?
Or to make it proactive, so as to prevent a lot of these things. A lot of times it's human error, or it is mechanical error that causes these.
Well, Salome, we'll have to call it a review here, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. And as always, we do wish you the best of the day.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that is Salome Brantia, policy analyst with Imani Africa, a vice president of that entity. He joined us for the news review. But up next, we have all the sporting action coming your way with Muftal Nabila Abdullahi. Do stay. We'll be right back.